Makes a huge difference if you'll do me a favor by subscribing and liking the podcast wherever you listen. It goes a long way. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy. Shabnam Mogharabi is an accomplished entertainment executive and entrepreneur with more than 20 years of experience leading media companies in strategy, growth, culture, and content. She is also a lifelong student of positive psychology. With actor Rainn Wilson, Shabnam co-founded the inspiring mission-driven studio SoulPancake, which she ran as CEO for nearly a decade before successful exit to film studio participant. Under her leadership, SoulPancake amassed 1 billion plus video views, claimed 12 million plus social media fans, and produced 50 plus hours of award-winning television. It was in espousing the values of SoulPancake, the importance of joy, hope, purpose, and gratitude, that Shabnam founded a calling as a public speaker. Today, while she professionally advises early-stage media and entertainment companies on their strategy, she finds personal fulfillment by sharing her uplifting, vulnerable message on how to harness the power of joy at dozens of conferences and events a year. We talk about that as well as how she met Rainn Wilson and convinced him and persuaded him to go into business together, her life journey, as well as their newest book, Soul Boom Workbook, Spiritual Tools for Modern Living. If you want to hear the story of how she and Dwight from The Office connected, listen in. Shabnam, welcome to the Wisdom of Life.
Thank you. That is a big, bold name for a podcast.
I know.
I feel a lot of pressure to deliver wisdom here, Dad.
I know. Somebody else was like, one of the guests was, Robin Dreek was like, so you're going to be providing the wisdom, right, Chad? And I'm just like,
I'll talk about life and how hard it is, and you'll provide all the wisdom. Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, ooh, now I feel pressure. So you talked about, we were talking offline about your book, Soul Boom Workbook, and I've been going through it, and I just got to say, like, right off the bat, I got to compliment you and Rainn. It's like, in relation to wisdom, like, it feels like a workbook of wisdom to me.
That's a fantastic compliment. Can I quote you on that in the
Yeah.
next edition of the? No, that's amazing. Thank you so much for saying that. We really tried. We tried to distill thousands of centuries of human wisdom and ancient spiritual learnings into something that was manageable in 200 and some pages. And so that means a lot. Thank you very much.
Yeah. It's powerful. Every single page I'm turning to and reflecting on and thinking about, I'm like, whoa, like I can spend the rest of my life on this page. Like that's the way I feel. And then I'll turn the next page and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is an exercise I want to do with others, like at my church or with a friend. I want to call up a friend and be like, and that's a beautiful gift. I feel like
Thank
you
you.
and your co-author have given to the world.
Thank you. And that was very intentional. I think Rainn and I wanted the book to feel like every page could offer something. And we actually, it's so funny that you say I want to go do it with people at my church and with friends, because our grand dream with this book would be to have hundreds of book clubs where people are actually doing this work together in connection with others in community and building kind of pockets of deep spiritual conversation at a time when the world just feels a little bit lacking in the sacred. And I think that if that happened, that would be like our dream. So I'm glad that it spoke to you, and that was really our intention. It was to kind of create a book that explores less of the why we need spirituality, or our definition of spirituality, and more is a way for people to embark on these conversations and have these conversations without the stigma of whatever dogma or faith or religion is telling them, but really think about themselves and their own souls and how they relate to the universe and how they show up and the values they have and what they believe about the meaning of life, and to make it a deeply personal. How do we build a spiritual life?
Yeah. I love that, and that's why I was drawn to your work and drawn to the church I go to. I go to a Unitarian church. I'm a member at in Denver. like the reason I was drawn to that church and drawn to this work as I've been diving into it is like it allows for the person to explore like these different ideas and topics. And it's like, wow, like rather than being told, okay, you have to do this or you have to think this way.
Yeah. And that was important for us too, was to not be prescriptive and not be dogmatic, to really say, hey, we're going to pull from Eastern traditions, from Western traditions, from Native and Indigenous practices. We're going to try to bring in as many strings and seeds as possible from all the sources of wisdom that exist out there. And how do we thread those things together and also show the similarities? Because it is wild when you get away from primarily ritual and dogma, right? You see that the seeds of most faith practices and most spiritual practices is in compassion, love, service, community, communion with others, prayer and meditation, right? These are communal and comprehensive ideas that exist across all faith practices. And so, how do we thread those needles and let people see that, like, actually, there's a lot of wisdom you can pull from every faith practice that can inform how you build your own?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. And in that, where I want to start, the jumping off point is in the acknowledgement section.
Hmm.
You put that you wrote that you hope to be just like your parents when you grow up.
I did.
And I wanted to ask, I wanted to, if you're willing to go there, like wondering, like, can you elaborate on that? Like
Yeah.
what you meant, what you mean by that, what you meant by that, because I thought that struck me, that stood out to me for sure.
Ugh, Chad, are you gonna make me cry talking about my mom and dad? Well, tears of joy. No, truly, I always said that I felt like I won the lottery because I've won the lottery in life because I was born to parents who truly love each other and who loved me and my siblings in a free country, right? Like without any oppression. And yet my parents, grew up in Iran, left when the revolution happened. My grandfather, my dad's dad, was actually taken in Iran 45 years ago. He went to a Baha'i meeting and he and 10 other people were just taken and never seen again. And so, there was a lot of persecution in Iran at the time of the revolution. And my parents came here and completely started over, like at a country where they didn't know the language, they didn't know anything. And they proceeded to not only build a life, but build a beautiful and loving life for us, for their kids. And through it all, my parents have, like all, people in a relationship, have argued, have, had challenges, financial challenges, personal and social challenges. Yet I never saw my parents raise their voice at each other. I never saw them get like really angry, like they always found a way to work through it as friends. They were always really loving with us. And they are the two hands down most generous people I know. Like our door was always open. I can't remember a time when our front door was not unlocked and people were not coming in and going from our house. We were like a community center with people coming and going, friends. People didn't have a place to go for Thanksgiving. They came to our house. If people, wanted to come over for breakfast in the morning, my mom would just say, "Oh, welcome." She's in her nightgown. She's like, "Come on in and have breakfast with us." Like my parents' doors have always been open. And they, even though have never been wealthy people, like they literally started over with nothing in this country. And I remember growing up, we didn't have much. And yet they've always given it all away. Like they have zero problem being generous with family, with friends, with neighbors, with the community. And I think it's those things, the idea of still being grounded and loving and not having anger and knowing how to show that love, even after having to start over and going through so much turmoil and loss, and not carrying that as pain and hate, but carrying that as love forward. And then also just their generosity. I mean, I'm like, why is my house not open more to people? And I need to have more people come to my home, and I need to be more, generous in how I give to others. And I try, but I never feel like I'm living up to what my parents have done. So when I say when I grow up, I want to be like them, that's what I mean. I want to just take all the pain and suffering I've ever experienced and live it forward in love and generosity. And if I could do that, I feel like I'd have nailed the being a good human part.
Yeah. They say the life you lead is the lesson you teach. And I feel like the way you describe your parents, they modeled behavior that you admire.
and strive for. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know how your spirits do this. Like, I feel so, and maybe it's because I am the oldest daughter of immigrants, which has its own things associated with it. But because I am kind of that oldest daughter, the driven, ambitious, I've got to succeed, I've got to prove myself, I've got it right. I take on a lot of anxiety and stress. And I feel like my parents are the model that I'm always looking to of like, oh, how do I turn this into love and generosity and, the community aspect of it? And I feel like I've strived for that my whole life. And I still don't feel like I'm close enough to where they are. The driven, Capricorn type A inside me is like, I still gotta do better.
I can go to the next level.
Next level up, yeah.
Even though you're one of the youngest winners of the journalism Pulitzer Prize, right? Like I read that on your
Yes,
website, things
the
like that.
Jesse H. Neal Award, which is it's equivalent of the Pulitzer Prize for business journalism. And yeah, I won that when I was 27 years old. Like I was so not, I'll just tell you, this is so funny. I'm sitting at this table and the article I had written, which was about high drowning rates of minority kids, Black and brown rates, who drown at 4 to 8 times that of white kids for a lot of reasons. They don't have role models. They don't have access to swimming pools. Swimming is not considered a life skill. It's really just a sport. And there's a lot more emphasis on sports like basketball and football and so on and so forth. So there's just a lot of reasons why there's just a higher drowning rate for Black and brown kids. So I wrote this whole investigative piece for 6 months, talked to more than 90 people. It was like a big meaty thing. But submitted it for a bunch of awards and it won several awards, but I was sitting at this awards show that it had gotten an award in. And they said, oh, now we're going to give the kind of Jesse Neal Award for the best in show, essentially. And I didn't even cross my mind that the article would be up for it. So I was literally talking to someone. We were like whispering about something, some other article. They were like, oh, that article was so great, da 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 da. And they announced my name and the name of the article. And I didn't think, to the point that the person next to me is tapping me like, I think you just won this award. And I'm like, what award? What are you talking about? Like, it didn't even occur to me that could have happened. And so I baffled and bewildered, walked up on that stage being like, is this happening? Like, what is happening right now? Truly, like it was a bewildering and humbling moment because I couldn't have imagined. And what's fascinating is the thing that actually took me away from journalism was that article, because it was sorry, I'm going on a tangent here. I don't
You
know if this
don't need
is
to be sorry. Please go on any tangents you want.
Go on, follow the tangents.
Stories, all that. Please.
Yeah,
continue.
it was this piece. So I write this piece and it wins all these awards. The New York Times picked it up. The Red Cross launched a whole initiative for inner city swim programs because of this article that I wrote. And what's fascinating is after all of the like hubbub died down, I was like, I just got so many accolades and so much praise and awards and this and that for an article where I talked to so many moms in the worst moment of their life. Like, hands down, the worst thing that could ever happen to them is their child drowned and they will never see their child again. And I'm getting all this praise and accolades for writing about the worst moment in someone's life. And it didn't sit well with me. And I was really struggling with, I don't know that I want to keep doing, like, this is not the kinds of stories I want to tell. Like, if I'm going to tell the stories of people who have had this deep loss, I want to tell the story of how they found the light on the other side. I don't want to tell the story of how that loss is now the story that everybody knows about them. And it really was kind of this moment that made me go like, maybe I don't want to be a journalist in the traditional sense anymore. I don't want to write about, if it bleeds, it leads. I'm not interested in those kinds of stories anymore. And honestly, it was a couple of years after that I intersected with Rain and SoulPancake. And it was almost like this moment of like, oh, right, these are the kinds of stories I want to tell. Like, there's a reason that I've been pulling away from the traditional journalism realm. And so it's funny that story, that article got so many awards and accolades and so many things happened that were amazing after it. And yet it was the story that put me on the path of like, I don't want to keep doing journalism in the traditional sense.
Oh my gosh, there's so much I want to pull from that. What I'm going to pull from that first.
Okay.
I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, when you went to go interview those mothers in the hardest moment of their lives. You had to demonstrate compassion and empathy and love through
Yeah.
your presence and through your words, your nonverbals, and all that, and like respect, right? So, can you talk about that? Like how you went about that? Because, like, that's not always a comfortable or easy thing to do.
It's not, and it's hard. And there were many times I would, in having the composure of compassion that you need to have and the presence you need to have, I would get off the phone and bawl my eyes out because it was so hard. There were several times, I will say, the other side, the person on the other side also has to be kind of receptive to that presence, because there were several times I reached out to people who didn't even give me a chance to explain what I was doing and who just hung up on me like, I do not want to talk to you about this, and would hang up on me. So there were many of those. But I think the thing that I learned, and I will say I learned this in the process of talking to more and more parents who had lost their children. But the thing I learned is that what you lead with is their life. Like, who was your son? Tell me what he loved to do. Show me, his favorite baseball card. Like, what's your favorite memory of him? What was he like as a baby? Do you remember, his first day of school? Like, asking the questions about their life was the best way to honor them and to make them feel seen, as they weren't the mother of a child at their worst moment. They were a mother of a child who had a full life before that worst moment. And so, yeah, I think the thing I learned is to start with the life. And that is where you can find more compassion than anything else. And honestly, it has served me to this day. I will say, whenever someone I love loses someone they love, right? I never start with oh, I'm so sorry, and, my condolences, and I'll say prayers, and like, we send you flowers. I'll be like, tell me about your dad. What was your favorite thing about your dad? What did you learn most about your dad? What drove you crazy about your dad? Right. And that allows them to almost like share the love, because what is grief, right? Great WandaVision line. Gotta love Marvel. What is grief if not love persevering? And that is so true. And so when you start with the life and the love in conversations, particularly hard ones when people have lost someone, I feel like that sets the stage for compassion and love more effectively than anything else.
Yeah, and I love that because it's to me it's like a release valve. It feels like
Mm,
it's letting them express, like, okay, in a healthy way, an effective functional way to like express, yeah, who this person that means so much to me is, versus just sitting with like, I'm sorry. And it feels like stagnant, like movement versus being stagnant. What do you think
yeah.
about that?
It is movement because it allows the feelings to process through. Also, this nobody wants to be defined by the worst thing they've ever done. And also, no life should be defined by the worst moment, right? And for a lot of the people left behind, when they die, that's one of the worst moments of their life, because they've lost this person that means so much to them. And so staying in that worst moment doesn't serve anyone, because there were a lot of amazing moments before that. And so the movement is really a movement in time, I think, to the time when their life and vibrancy and soul and presence affected you and shaped you. And the more you can get people to move into that, I actually think it helps with processing the grief too, because it's a reminder that, like, what is left behind is those footprints on that shaped you. And like, if you can be reminded of that they're always with you in the memories that you carry, I think that's powerful. And it does help with grief. It's helped me personally. My grandfather, who passed away in 2018, one of my favorite hands down people in the universe. And could listen to his stories for hours, and we would play cards for hours. Like, my grandfather was a cheat when it came to cards, but he was also like, it was like the thing we always did together. And yeah, but I missed it so much. And talking about all of the things that I learned from my grandfather was the way that I processed the grief. Like, I talked about it, I wrote about it, I wrote blog posts about it and social posts about it. And I spoke at his memorial about the things my grandfather taught me and I learned from him, because that was how I process. Like, that was my way of processing.
What's one of the best lessons he taught you?
Oh my God, he taught me so many things. So I'll tell you a couple of the best things that my grandfather taught me. So my grandfather ended every night every night before he went to bed with a dance. And what I mean is he would literally get up from the table. It didn't matter when it was. Like, he'd just get up from the table. I'm going to go take a nap or I'm going to go to bed. And he'd say, somebody play a song. He'd say it in Farsi, but he'd say, like, somebody drop a beat. And so someone would play a song on their phone or on the radio. And he would just like shake his hips while he's exiting the room and walking upstairs, out the stairs. And I loved it so much because I was like, always exit a room on a high. Like, always exit the room on the high, you know? And that was like a big, like, I always like that became like indoctrined in me, this idea of like always exit the room on a high, like leave at that moment where you're like on cloud nine, because that's like the last moment people will remember you. And it's the moment you remember when you're going up to take your nap or go to sleep or whatever it is. So I loved that. And the other thing that my grandfather did, which I think is just brilliant, is he had a way to make everyone feel like they were the most special person in the room. So he had, with everyone he knew, it was like wild. Everyone who ever came over, who we would ever meet, I'd never met them before, but if my grandfather knew them, he either had a nickname with them, a nickname for them, an inside joke, a handshake, a game they always played together. Like, he had something special with every single person he knew. And I think they felt so loved and special because my grandfather had this special nickname or a special inside joke with them. And to this day, I'm like, what are the things that can be like my little thing with the people that I love that that will always make them think of, oh, you know, like with me, he had this little song he would sing in Farsi that was just mine. He made it up and it was like my little song, but like, I know that that's my song. Right. And so I have a voice memo of him singing it on my phone. Like, that was the thing that made me feel like I was special to him and loved. And so I think the idea that, like, when you love someone, let them know every day in every interaction in some small way that they are special to you. I think that was also a really powerful lesson that I learned.
Can you sing that song to me in Farsi?
I am not a good singer, but I'll sing
It's
it for
fun.
you. It's in Farsi. It
Okay.
goes, Shabnam male babaye, be hiç kasam nemide, nemide, nemide. So what it means is Shabnam belongs to Baba. She's all mine, and I'm never going to let anyone else have her. Nobody, nobody, nobody.
So cool. Like,
Yeah.
it makes me think of are you familiar with the lawyer activist Brian Stevenson?
Yes, 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 yes.
Movie and book Just Mercy.
Yeah, I was at Participant. So we sold our company, SoulPancake, to Participant Media, and I was at Participant when they were making Just Mercy. So I'm very familiar with Brian Stevenson and his work. And we went and visited the EJI centers and their big memorial in Atlanta, Alabama. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Wow.
very familiar with it.
In the beginning of the book, I think, if I remember correctly, he talks about how his grandmother used to say to him, Brian, you're so special, you're capable of so much, like don't get distracted, don't let anybody take you down the wrong path. I think there were like his cousins and maybe a brother or something like smoking cigarettes, and
Mm,
she didn't want him doing that, and she was like, "You don't do it because you're special." And he told his cousins that, and they started laughing because they said, "No, she says that to everybody." But like in the story, he said like he carried that with him, like that feeling like, okay, I've got this gift and I've got to give it to the world and I can't like waste it. And so it made me think about like why that sparked for me. I haven't thought about it in a while, but like with your grandfather singing that specific song to you, like you said, versus your sister, right? Like, or singing to both of you. It's like it's that individual identifier saying like you matter, you count in this world.
yeah. It's I see you. I see you. You matter to me. I love you. You're important to me. Just you. Not as part of a whole, not I love all my grandchildren, but you. And what's funny is he had something special with every grandchild. He had something special with every child, every friend. And it was different with everyone. And he was masterful at it. Just masterful.
And you said, first off, I didn't say it, but that is beautiful. Thank you for, you're the first person to sing on this podcast. So that's
I
so
can't,
cool.
and I have a terrible voice, so that is not a high bar to for other people to overcome. You're gonna have to get someone who can actually carry a tune to.
Yeah. I'm going to get like Alicia Keys next or something. Yeah. So thank you for that. You said he was such a great storyteller. right? Do you feel like, and you could listen to his stories, do you feel like your journalism prowess, like capabilities, were influenced, impacted, like from his storytelling?
Possibly. Most of his stories were about his life, like he would tell stories about his life and his experiences. He was a doctor, he was a pediatrician, and, that was kind of his calling. And he was a big, strong, kind of cared about health and well being. And that was like a big, big part of kind of his identity. But most of his stories were personal, like his personal stories. I actually think I've always just been very curious, and I think I ask to hear the stories a lot, whereas I don't think a lot of people do. And I just think I've always just naturally been curious. I think probably some of his storytelling skills, I've adopted in how I tell stories, but I definitely think like I've always just been curious about other people. I like knowing what makes people tick and what drives them, and what's important to them. And I've always been curious in that way.
Yeah. When you were little, were you around other elders, aunts, uncles? You talked about people always coming over to the house. Would you sit there as a child and like listen to their stories or listen to their conversations? Like you talk about that curiosity.
Yeah, so here are some fun stories about Shabnam as a child. So I was the oldest. I was the oldest, like daughter, oldest grandchild. Like I was always left in charge with like 6, 7 other kids. Like, okay, Shabnam, you watch them and play with them. And when we would go to other people's homes, there are literally multiple pictures of me as a kid where we're at like a gathering, like we've gone to dinner at someone's house and there's like 15 people like all hanging out having dinner, and I'm on the couch with a book reading a novel, right? Like there's multiple pictures of me reading books when everybody else is like having a party. That's how much I loved stories and reading and stories. And when I would be left alone with all these kids, the way I entertained them was we would put on plays. So I would say, okay, guys, we're going to put on a play for all the grown-ups. And so I would get like my sister we'd do like the Three Little Pigs, and I would make my 3 little cousins be the 3 pigs, and my sister would be the wolf. And this one would be the narrator. And like we'd get sheets and towels and chairs, and we'd set up a whole scene. And then we'd have our moms and our dads and our aunts and uncles like watch our performance. And so I literally have, again, home videos of me directing everyone. And I'm like, Jesus, I have been obsessed with stories and a producer my whole life. Like, I can't, like, this is just like, I have been wired this way since I was a kid. So it is very funny how the way that you are as a child and the experiences you have, like, really do shape you. And like I said, because I was the oldest, I was around a lot of adults. So everyone around me was my parents, my aunts and uncles, my grandparents. Like, I was always the child with all the adults because I was the first. And so I do feel like that, yeah, I have a little bit of an old soul tendency. I love stories, and stories is how I get everyone together and wrangle them all and get them all on the same page. So, yeah, it's in my DNA, whether I like it or not.
And where did spirituality come in for you? Like, was it there right at the beginning? Because I think I read that you were like president of a club at USC in undergrad related to that, but like was it in play for you early on, like elementary school,
Yeah.
middle school, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, again, my parents are religious refugees from Iran. So when the Islamic Revolution happened, my parents, who are Baha'is, came to the United States. And I was raised as a Baha'i, and I grew up going to Sunday children's classes and reading Baha'i writings. And, as I got older, towards the end of high school, my parents were like, hey, it's really important that independent investigation is a really important principle in the Baha'i faith. Like, it's really up to each individual to explore all faith practices and traditions for themselves, interpret writings and texts for themselves, and kind of decide what path makes sense for them. So they were really encouraging about, like, when you go to college, you should join the interfaith groups and like be exposed to as many different faiths as you can. And I actually got my undergrad degree with a minor in comparative religion and was the president of the Interfaith Society. But what's fascinating is when I graduated college, I kind of had this, I was out working and I was like very like driven by success, and I'm going to make all the things happen and I'm going to do all these things. And I found myself feeling very distant from religion and faith. And I was kind of like, wait, why do I believe this stuff? Is it just because my parents told me I had to believe this? And like, I spent all this time in college, like going to all these religious groups. And yes, I see the importance of it for many people. I believe in God, but do I really, is this my faith or is this not right? So I definitely had kind of a breaking and parting of ways in my early 20s and really kind of left my faith in a lot of ways. Like I wasn't really engaged in activities. I didn't go to like a church or belong to any kind of groups. And it wasn't until kind of my late 20s, early 30s that I came back to it. And it was only because I went through a particularly challenging couple of years then. And I found myself continuously coming back to the prayers of my childhood. Like I would find myself repeating prayers that I said when I was a kid, and repeating prayers and seeking out prayers that I remember reading when I was in high school and college. And I suddenly was like, wait, I threw all this out, for the last like 6 years, I've kind of thrown this out. And now I find myself drawn back to it. And I was like, there's something here. And I kind of went on a reintroducing myself to my faith period in my early 30s, which interestingly coincided with SoulPancake and the growth of that. And so there were a lot of convergences that happened in my early 30s around my personal life, my professional life, my spiritual life. It all just kind of coalesced at that point.
What were some of those prayers about that really you were drawn to, that were helping you in these challenging times?
Yeah. So that period of time, it was height of the recession of 2008. I was laying people off. I was running a magazine group and I was laying a bunch of people off. I also had come off the heels of winning this big award, which I was making me question journalism altogether. I also was in a very unhealthy relationship and ended up calling off an engagement at that same time, which was really hard and kind of devastating from a personal perspective. And it was such an unhealthy relationship. There was like a long tail to the like separation, with a lot of family dynamics and other things at play. And it was just a hard time personally and professionally. And the prayers that I kept coming back to, there's a prayer in the Baha'i practice that's a healing prayer. It's a very short healing prayer that says, the line that it says is, "Thou art my healing and my succor in both this world and the world to come." So like identifying God as kind of the source of healing. And then there's a second prayer that is called "Refresh and Gladden My Spirit." And it's about dispelling afflictions and anxiety and how to unburden yourself, to not dwell on the unpleasant things of life. And I think at that time, I have said this before, but I was desperate for light. And I don't know another way to say it, but I felt so in the dark with work and with my personal life that I was desperate for anything that would bring light to my life. And so those prayers, they felt like little sparks of light that I could lean into. And I genuinely think like they really helped me. And there's other ones. There's like a very long prayer called the Tablet of Ahmad, which we in the Baha'i faith is one that you're supposed to say when you're in times of distress. And so I was constantly like going back to these prayers that I read in my childhood and being like, oh, why do I keep going back to these? Like maybe there was wisdom in these and I threw them all out the last 6-7 years. So yeah, it was prayers around healing and sorrow and distress and the release of that to God, those kinds of prayers that I was.
Yeah. And over time, you started to feel more light in, or what was that process like for you?
Yeah. Well, I started going back to praying, which I hadn't prayed in a long time. And I started praying every night, which I hadn't done for many, many years. So I started praying every night and there was calm kind of that came with that. I also was going out into nature more. I was living in Bethesda, Maryland, and there's a lot of beautiful trails and forested areas out there. And so when I was like really feeling like, why does every part of my life feel like it's crashing down on me? I would end up taking my cousin's dog. So my cousin and my aunt and uncle live in the DC area. So I would go get my cousin's dog and we'd go for a long walk. And that was really like, it was like a reset. It would quiet my mind in a lot of ways, like the prayer did. And I think that it was the quieting of the mind that allowed light in other places to come in. And so that was the time where I heard Rain on the radio talking about this media platform he wanted to start, which was so aligned with what I had written my whole master's thesis about. So I was like, oh my God, I have to find a way to work on this. And so SoulPancake became one source of kind of light. I quit my job in DC, moved to San Francisco and took a whole other job. And that was kind of a source of light, like getting out of that place and getting out of that scene. I kind of took a sabbatical from dating. I was like, I'm just going to like take 1 year off and like just focus on me. And so I was the stillness that came with time in nature and prayer is what I think allowed more light to come into my life. It was almost as if being in my head as much about all the heavy things was preventing it. And so I needed to quiet the mind. I needed to quiet the mind to let the light in. And that I truly believe that was it was a pivotal moment for me from a spiritual perspective, from a just life perspective, and how I think about the importance of the quiet mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And today, are you still?
I still pray every night. I do.
Yeah.
Prayer is a sanctuary for me. Some people are not believers. I am. I'm a person of faith. I believe in God. And while my attendance of religious organizations and gatherings has had ups and downs depending on life, I pray every night. Prayer is the thing that makes me feel connected to both myself, quiets my brain, makes me feel connected to the divine and the sacred. And so I do. I pray every night. It is the one thing that I come back. And I still, honestly, I have a certification in positive psychology. So I know all the things that you're supposed to know for your mental well-being. And everyone will tell you gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. And I do feel like I'm a pretty grateful person. But the thing that I still default to is take me on a walk outside and put me in the sun for 10 minutes and it resets my brain.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate. I have a certification as well, from Penn in positive psych, and for me, there's nothing like being in nature. Just
Nothing.
that the movement in nature. Yeah, it's just
The wind, the sounds of the trees, water, and the sun just hitting you. It really does feel like your whole body can calm down. And not looking at a phone. Like that's it. Like so many people will be like, I'm going to go out in nature. And then they like put their headphones on and they like listen to a podcast. And I'm like, no, like listen to the earth. Like that, like listen to the earth. Yeah.
yeah. My buddy a couple of years ago, I'm trying to remember whether he sent me the book or he just recommended it. I think he sent it to me. It's called The Nature Fix. Have you ever
I
come
have
across
not.
this? It's
No.
fascinating. This journalist um, went around the world, and it's like different cultures and different countries and different spaces and places about the positive impacts of being in nature. It's a beautiful, yeah, like beautiful piece of work about the benefits, but also just like these different environments and different cultures and different countries and different spaces and places where people spend time in nature and how it's helped them. The nature
Are you
fix.
familiar with Dr. Rachel Hopman?
No,
No.
you tell.
So she's now at I can't remember what university is she at, but when she was at Northeastern University, she developed this nature pyramid. So basically she did all this research and studies around just how much nature do we need for it to actually affect our mental well-being. And she made, like there's the food pyramid that says this much meat and this much dairy and right, like that we all learned in elementary school. So she basically made the nature pyramid, and it has like a whole formula of like the minimum levels of time we need in nature to actually positively impact our brains and our bodies. And it's just such a good little graphic because it reminds you like it's not just something that like you can do one and done. You got to like make it a consistent habit. Yeah, because her whole thing is like you have to spend 20 minutes 3 times a week. You have to kind of unplug for at least several hours once every few months. And then at least once a year, go like full on 3 to 5 days, like in a cabin, camping. That's how much we need exposure to nature for our well-being. So she has this whole pyramid about it, and it's really fascinating.
Totally dive into that. I love that. Thank you for
Yeah.
bringing that up. Yeah, because it's one of those things nowadays, like for me, where I kind of forget how much it helps me. Like when I'm,
In the zone and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, just like at the computer or on the phone, in the house, whatever it is, instead of like just being out in nature. And like every time I'm like out in nature, I'm just like, oh, yeah, it's like it can be easy to forget like the massive impact.
Yeah, it is. I mean, for 20 minutes outside, the exponential positive effect on us. Like we take it for granted how exponentially positive it is for us. I will say, having young children, I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, they love being outside. And it's also fascinating how much more you notice with kids being outside. Like, my kids are like, Mommy, look at this slug, or wow, look at this beautiful leaf. And it's like a dried leaf that's fallen off a tree, but because it has a little bit of red in it, it's like, wow, look how pretty and beautiful this leaf is. So like, they're just so in tune with it naturally, with the earth and how cool it is, that it's nice when I go out with my kids into nature. They remind me of like the little things to focus on and notice, not just the big things of the sun shining on my face and the wind blowing, but like just the little things, that are beautiful, like the little yellow dandelion that my daughter picks up and is like, look at this beautiful flower, Mommy. And I'm like, yeah, so beautiful. Looks like the sun, huh? Yeah. So I will say, having young kids just reminds you that the beauty isn't even, it has to be grand. It can be really small too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. It makes me think of Docker. I don't know how to say his first name. Keltner. He's at Berkeley, and he has a book about awe. And he's with a Greater Good Science Center, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And in like the book, he talks about like that time in nature, just opening that like vessel of awe for him.
I love that, because it is, I do think that sometimes when people think about spirituality, joy, what they're really describing is that sense of awe and wonder. It just is coming from different sources. And I fully buy into that, fully buy into it. I'm sold. Sign me up.
So you said, right, this convergence, right? Like, I wanted to ask you, about meeting Rain and collaborating with him, because how many people, like, it's common to say, especially say someone's a celebrity, like famous or something, where you're like, oh my gosh, I would just love to work on a project with them, and it's like this dream, but it doesn't come to fruition, right? And like, I remember, years ago when I came across like Brene Brown, and I was like reading her work, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I would just love to interview Brene and, have a dinner with her and just, talk to her and get to know her and that sort of thing. Like, but that hasn't happened yet.
Yet is the key word. Yeah.
But how did this process happen for you, or how did you make it happen? Because it seems like uncommon, right? Like, and the reason I'm asking is not just to preface it. It's not like, okay, because I think there's a lesson for me and for my audience there of like taking the leap and like how you actually made it a reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lasting relationship. I think
Yeah.
there's something there that we could all like pull from.
Sure. Well, a lot of people have asked me, oh, how did you have the courage, the confidence to reach out to Rain, et cetera? And, if I'm really honest, it wasn't courage or confidence. It was a little bit out of desperation. I said I was kind of like seeking the light. And the way this all came about is I did my grad school around media management. I got a master's in media management, and I wrote a thesis about the need for media to cover philosophical and spiritual ideas and make them more relevant in the modern world. We don't really elevate the ideas of spiritual thinkers and philosophers. So I wrote my thesis about this. And then fast forward a few years later, and I hear Rain, who I did not know. We are both Baha'is. We are both in the same spiritual practice, but I actually didn't know him. He was just an actor on a TV show that I didn't watch. I didn't watch The Office at the time, but he was on NPR, and he was talking about what are the other interests he has. And he was talking about the fact that he's slowly building a media platform for life's big questions. And I was like, wait a minute, that was like my grad school thesis. Like, what the heck? So and I was, again, at that moment, like in a very dark place, like my personal life, my professional life, like I was feeling really dark, and I was desperately seeking out like sources of light. And so I said, you know what do I have to lose? Like, he's probably not going to meet with me or talk to me, but at this point, things are so rough. Like, what do I have to lose? So, it was not courage or confidence. It was a little bit of desperation. that made me just be like, whatever, I'm just going to try and see what happens. And I reached out to a bunch of people, and it was a mutual friend who actually introduced us. And I remember when I met with Rain, I met him on the set of The Office. And I went with this mutual friend of ours to his trailer on the set of The Office, and he's in full Dwight regalia. And yeah, full Dwight regalia. And I'm super intimidated because I did not even think I would even get to this point of a meeting. And here I am sitting there. And at that point, what I realized is I knew how to do something he didn't, right? Which is that he was saying, oh, in 3 weeks, I'm going on the Super Soul podcast with Oprah. We've got this technology. I hired this coder. He's built this website, but like, we don't really have any content yet. And we got to get content up and running. And, so-and-so said that that's what you do. And I was like, oh, wait, that is what I do, right? And so I said, yeah, I can pull together resources. I can pull together writers, photographers, videographers. We can get content up and running in a few weeks. 3 weeks is short, but I'll see what I can do. And they were like, great, and I'll let you work with my partner on figuring out the logistics. And his partner was like, well, how much do you want for this? Like, how much can we pay you to this? And I was like, I actually don't want to be paid. I want this. I want to do this. So I want equity. If I can make this happen for you guys, I want equity in the business, and I want to come into it because I believe in this so much. And he was like, well, let me talk to Rain. And they decided to kind of say, okay, well, if we get to this milestone, we'll get the vesting plan put together. So I just kind of asked for what I wanted because, again, I didn't feel like I had anything to lose. I was already at the lowest I could feel. So like having this meeting was like, I was blindsided by it. Like, there's no way I'm going to get it. And then I got it and I was like, well, I might as well just say all the things I can do. And that was the point where I was like, okay, I'm just going to hit the ground running on this because I actually do know how to do this. And so then I spent the next 3 weeks, I took a bunch of time off of work. I spent the next 3 weeks not staying up late and calling in every favor from every writer and videographer and photographer I knew. And I basically got us launched in 3 weeks with 6 weeks worth of runway of content. And I stepped into owning all the content. So like we were bombarded with like requests of interviews, and I was writing everything and pulling it all together, and I did the work, right? Like a lot of people say, I want to work with so-and-so. And I just, but like, I did the work. I did the work. I put in the hours. I did the work. I have pretty good taste. And so I think all those things coalesce to then be like, oh, wow, she was trustworthy. She delivered. We were able to rely on her. And, at the beginning, like when you're working with a celebrity, you're very deferential to that celebrity, so Rain's point of view, what Rain wanted to do was a lot of what we did. And it took several years to build kind of the level of trust that we have now, 17 years later of working together. We have a lot of trust in each other, but it took time to build that. And it took time for me to build the confidence to, say, Rain, I don't agree with that. I think we should do this instead. And here's why, right? So like that took time, and it took him feeling like he could trust me, that I delivered, that I did the work, that I showed up. And the other thing I'll say is I've never wanted to be famous. I've never wanted to be an actor. I've never wanted to be an on-camera personality. Like that was never a thing I've ever wanted in my life. And so it also helps that we have some similar skills, but also separate skills, right? I like building a business and managing a team. And I liked setting a vision and like making it happen. And I'm good at pitching and selling deals and closing deals in a room. Rain is a great writer and a performer, and he wants to be on camera and he wants to have that presence. I don't. And so I think that also helped because like I was never vying for what he did, and like I just wanted to build this platform and mission, and I believed in it. And it just so happened that the other person who believed in it was this celebrity. And now I have watched all of the episodes of The Office. Now I've watched the show. Now he is truly a friend, and now I can be honest with him and he can be honest with me. But I think our collaboration took time to build and get to this point. But I unfortunately I can't say it was like some brilliant stroke of confidence, or I really do think my initial reach out was just out of desperation. And feeling like I have nothing to lose.
Yeah, and it sounds also like there was resonance.
Yes.
So it wasn't.
I really resonated. Yeah, I really resonated with what he said. I remember sending to our mutual friend like the first page of my thesis, the abstract summary, and I'm like, it's exactly the same. Like this is what I wanted to do 10 years ago. Like I believe in this. And then when we met, and we were sitting in the trailer talking, I was also throwing out ideas like, well, you could explore it this way, you could do that, we could do this, we could create a column like this, we could, right? So I was throwing out ways to also build out that content that I think resonated with him. And so yes, I think out of the gate, there was resonance with each other's voice and ideas. And we clicked, like we did click. And I clicked with the co-founder, like I clicked, and I think they saw someone who was hardworking and driven and delivered. And so I think all those things were the foundational elements of building the trust. There was resonance there. We had rapport, did the work and delivered the work, and the work was quality work. So like all those things were the elements that built the trust in the beginning.
Yeah. And you mentioned just a minute ago that you love building a business.
Yes.
Right? I see it in your face. Lights up.
I do.
What is it that you love about building a business?
I love the team aspect of it more than anything else. I love building a team and a culture that like vibes and coalesces together and is all working towards the same vision. I love it. It lights me up, figuring out how to solve problems together, figuring out the best way to bring stories to life, to bring ideas to life. Like I love it. And it's one of the things I'm most proud of is that I built a team at SoulPancake. By the time we were selling to participants, we were at between 30 to 40 people, 40 people full-time and part-time. And I had little to no turnover. I had less than 5% employee turnover prior to that. And so, I was really proud of that. Like people I hired, I think, knock on wood, I don't know. I was good at hiring, and I hired the right people who really believed in the mission. And I hired for the people first and skills second. Like I never hired just the brilliant person who was also a jerk, right? Like I was hiring the people first and the skills second. And I think that also made a difference because I was hiring for the culture and hiring for team fit. And I love that aspect of building a business. I love it so much.
When you were hiring, what were you looking for from that people standpoint?
Yeah.
To work with your culture, what were you looking for and how were you identifying that?
Yeah. So we had a whole interview process, like a multi-round interview process. And one of the components of our interview process was they had to come with a presentation about what they're passionate about. They would have to come in that conversation with what they're personally passionate about, shows they've seen that they love, that they resonate with, and why it resonates with them, the people who have shaped them in their life and why. And what was fascinating is I could see when people's eyes would light up when they were talking about content that was aligned with SoulPancake, or if it wasn't aligned with SoulPancake, what about it worked with, like, did they love about it? And I could see what parts of those stories that they loved lit them up. When they talked about what they were passionate about, I could see the way they communicated about that passion, right? And then at the end, we would also ask, like, give us like the five reasons, including one reason that would surprise us why you would want to work at SoulPancake. And even that was insightful. It's like, how much of it was rote answers and like, I want to work for a media company. I wanted that, right? Like, and how much of it like resonated with our mission? Because at the core, we wanted people who had bought into our worldview. And if they had bought into our worldview and they had light in their eyes when they spoke about the things they loved, and they resonated with the types of stories we made and the types of themes we covered, and they had passionate about things, like about areas of their life that were not work, then we knew we were getting someone who was well-rounded and had a very similar worldview to us. So like that, those were the kinds of things that we would delve into as part of the interview process. Now we'd also have them do other, the traditional interviews and interview with our HR person and the manager you're going to have and so on and so forth. But like we had one entire portion of our interview process was very much like, you're presenting to us about your personal passions, stories you find interesting, why you want to work at SoulPancake. That was a much more, I guess, touchy-feely than anything else. And that was very intentional. That was a very intentional part of the process because we wanted to know who the human was that we were hiring, because that's what made the team. That was part of the team.
They say that eyes are the windows to the soul.
I so believe that. There were many people, now years later, I can say there were many times where someone on my team would say, I really want to hire this person, their background, they're this, I think they're the right person. And I'd be like, their eyes didn't light up one time when they were talking. And that means that they were just saying the things that they thought we wanted to hear. It was not authentic And I could see it. You could see it. You can see it in someone's eyes when they love something they're talking about. And yeah, so.
Yeah, and I think you can feel it too, right? Like if you
Yeah,
pay
you
attention
can.
to that, right? Like feel it.
You
Yeah.
can feel it. There's an energy. There is an energy that people emit when they are in the zone of what they care about. And I was looking for that. I wanted to hire for that energy.
And so that's the hiring part. I got to ask you, I'm so curious, like you said, that retention,
Mm-hmm.
right? And engagement. I mean, all these organizations all over the world are like fighting for that, right? Like are striving for that in some respect or other, right? Like, what do you attribute to being able to do that over an extended period of time? Like when you look
I
back at
mean,
your,
it's not one thing. It's really not one thing. I think there were several things that we did well. Like I said, we hired for humans, the human behind the person and the skills. And I think that honoring the human in the way that we ran the company, like if people needed a break, they'd get a break. If people needed time off, they could get their time off. Like if people were having a hard time because of XYZ, we let people share that and process it and how they need it to. So I think honoring that we're not just machine cogs in a machine, and we're all real people with real lives. And that was every single person had a big heart and had empathy and understood that. And so I think that was just a part of the culture, a natural part of the culture because of the way we hired. And so I think that was helpful for everyone to feel like, oh, they could show up good or bad and be kind of accepted as part of this team. So I think that was just part of the culture. But I think another thing is like I was very quick to fire the jerks. If someone got through and tricked me into the hire, there was a no jerks allowed. Like, there was not room for being a bad communicator, being a jerk to people, being inappropriate in any way, being demanding, or it's got to be my way. There's no, conversation, dictatorial, like that was never going to fly. So those people went out fast. Like those people, they were gone fast because we had a big no jerks allowed policy. The other thing that I think is really important is just from a leadership perspective. I very much so think that the best leaders have three core qualities, which is, number one, you lead with a service mindset. So your question is like, what are you doing next? Or when are we delivering this? Your number one question is always, how can I help you? If that's the question you always start with in any conversation, like someone comes to you and says, oh, we have a problem with this client, or we have a problem with this project. How can I help you? What do you need from me to solve the problem? Right. So the leading with how can I help was, I think, really important. And I think something I encourage all our managers to do. The second principle or quality is never accepting a no.
yeah.
And what I mean by that is I'm a big believer. I mean, this was a mantra that everyone on my team knew, is like, yes, if, no, but, right? Like I never want to hear no full stop. I want to hear, yes, we can do that if XYZ in place, or no, we can't do that, but we can do this, right? I never wanted to hear a no. And I think that encouraged people to not only be creative and problem solve, but to always like be thinking of a solution and being optimistic in how they approach something. So like, no, we can't give that client this, but we can do XYZ, which might help to alleviate that. Or, yes, we can do this crazy big ambitious build for this production, but we're going to need X, Y, and Z to happen to make it happen. Right. So like always leading with yes, if, no, but was like a mantra for me. So no was just never an acceptable answer. And then the third thing is transparency. So I'm a big believer in decisions being made collaboratively, consultation being a key part of how decisions are made. And yes, sometimes there's some person who's going to ultimately make that final decision, but they're never going to do it in a vacuum. They're going to do it with the input of everyone, and to be transparent about everything in the business. So like my team knew exactly how much we made on every deal, and how much was spent on production, and how much went to operating costs. Like I was very transparent with our financials. I was very transparent with when I was going out to raise money. Like I'm taking meetings with investors. Our primary focus this year is raising money, because here's what the next 2 years look like. And we're going to break even both these years, which is not what we need for growth. So that's why we're going out and raising money and bringing in new investors. So like I was very transparent about the business itself, because I wanted people to feel like there's a reason, like our bonuses weren't as big this year as they were last year. Like, and I know why. Like, I know exactly what's been going on this year, and the decisions aren't being made in a vacuum. Like, Shabnam and the other executives and VPs are taking input from us and using that to inform their decisions, even if they're the ones ultimately making it. It's not three people sitting in a room making decisions for everyone at the company. And I think that was also, for me, those are the three things that I think are the most important to building a culture that's very high trust and also creative, problem solving oriented, optimistic, and honoring, again, the humans that we all are. That was a
I
long
mean,
answer. Sorry.
it's great. You don't have to be sorry. I love it, Shabnam. To me, that's like a triad. You've
Mm,
got the person piece. You're understanding that there's a person and they're in a role, right? Then you've got the transparency, so there's integrity there, right? Like that trust, right? And then like you talked about that,
the servant leadership side of
yeah, the
it.
servant
Yeah.
the servant leadership and the combination of being like, to me it feels like people could take a responsibility and an ownership, because instead of just being told no, 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 it's like, all right, there's opportunities here.
Yeah. And I also think because my questions were never, well, why did this happen? How did that go wrong? Like my questions were not focused on what went wrong. My questions were always focused on like, okay, how can I help? What do you need to resolve this? I think people also felt comfortable owning up to when they made a mistake or when something went wrong. Like, hey, I dropped the ball. The client didn't get this on time. They're really mad about X, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, okay, well, it happened. How can I help you? Like, what do you need? Right? Like, it wasn't about focusing on the mistake and how did it go wrong. And so I think people also felt comfortable saying, hey, I made a mistake, or I dropped the ball on this, or, something's not working out and I tried doing this and that backfired, right? Like people were very honest about that because listen, life is long, careers are long, like people make mistakes. Sometimes you're learning on the job and that's just part of the reality of being, again, a human. And so I don't think people grow if you get mad at them or punish them about mistakes. I think people grow if you help them figure out how to solve the mistakes that they will inevitably make, because we've all made mistakes in our lives. We've all made missteps. We've all made the wrong call. Like, that happens. So people don't learn if you berate them about that. People learn if you help them figure out how to solve it. And so that's the mentality I've always taken around it.
Yeah, yeah, collaborative approach. Kudos to you for intentionally cultivating an environment, a culture of psychological safety.
Thank you. I've never
Yeah.
described it that way, but I like that.
Yeah, because like you said, people felt, right? People
Yeah.
feel whether they can come forward and say, I messed up, I made a mistake, or I think this is messed up, like that, and not feel the repercussions that it's going to come back on them, that like, okay, this is,
I just ended my career by
yeah,
making this. No.
yeah, I'm going to be
Yeah.
punished for this, or I'm going to be outed for this, or something of that effect. Like creating that environment to me is like an incredible example of leadership.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's one of the things I'm most proud of. We got 1 billion video views on content. We had so many viral hits and so many amazing wins. And all of that is because of the team. I cannot take credit for that, but I do feel very proud about the culture that we built and how I led the team. And I do feel really proud of myself for that.
Yeah. And I just wonder if, like, we started, right? We started an hour ago, or so. I just wonder, you talked about, that your parents, like the feeling of generosity, and you said something to the effect of like you felt loved,
Hmm.
right? And your dog feels loved, or whatever that dog was.
Yeah, that
Um,
was my dog barking outside the door saying, let me in.
I mean, I want some love. I just wonder, like, if that's a through line through your life. Like, you felt that from the beginning, and you've like intentionally carried that forward, not just in your personal life, but in your professional life as well. Like that feeling, right? Like of I care about. I'm here to help you. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, you said we were going to go places that we haven't gone on other podcasts. Way to deliver, Chad. Way to deliver.
goodness, that's
Yeah.
funny.
Uh yeah, we it's funny. My parents did lead with love. and care and compassion. They never argued or yelled or did, it was always very consultative in my house. And my parents have always been very, very generous with their time and their resources and their love and giving to the community. And yeah, I mean, I've never really looked at it through that lens, but I think you're right. I did take that into the workplace. I did. And it was how I led. And I did lead with a lot of love and care. I wanted my team to know I saw them as people first, not just employees, not just ex marketing director or production producer or whatever, but really truly I saw them as people who I loved and cared about and wanted the best for. I guess I was the mom of the team in that way. So yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. I probably did carry that in.
Yeah. And what a beautiful aspect to carry in.
Yeah.
Because
Like I said, I'm real lucky. When I say I feel like I won the lottery, I did. I won the lottery. I was born to parents who loved each other and loved me and my sisters. And like there's nothing I am trying so hard to do that for my own kids. And I really do believe that that is winning the.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Like when you say you're trying so hard, do you mean like what do you mean by that? Because to me, is it like you're just being so intentional about that,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
yeah?
No,
What do you
it's,
mean?
and also what I mean by that is, parenting, I think, opens up parts of yourself that you didn't even know you had. And I think parenting is also, they always say your children are truly your mirror, like the things that are hardest about yourself or your spouse, they get reflected right back at you in the form of a little 2-year-old who stubbornly won't put on their shoes, right? Like it's like, wow, that stubbornness is like next level. And so I do think parenting challenges you in different ways. And so when I think about, wow, my parents really just had an immense amount of patience and compassion and love and care, how do I channel that with my kids? Because there are days that I'm just like, please, for the love of God, put on your shoes. We have to go. We're going to be late. Right. And like, there are so many times where I'm just like, I don't know that I have the depth. I thought I was a patient person. I thought I was this amazing, nurturing person. And then you're confronted with that in your children. And sometimes you get to that point where you're like, oh, maybe I didn't have as much as I thought. And I think that push and pull, that tension is the thing that I'm constantly trying to overcome. I read all the books. I listen to the parenting podcast. I like, I'm a Dr. Becky Kennedy adorer, when it comes to like really, really, really leading with like your children are good. They are good. They are not doing this because they're bad. Like this is true. And I believe this, but it's also really hard in day-to-day practice. When you've asked your kid for the fourth time to do something and they haven't, and they know very well how to do it. And you're just like, please, anyone listen to me. And you're just like, wow, this really is testing every limit I have. And so when I say I'm trying so hard to channel those things, it's because intentionality in parenting is so freaking hard. And every day I have great moments, and every day I'm like, dang, I should have done that better. And I think the thing I'm learning is how important it is to acknowledge that with my kids. Like that's the thing I have learned over the last 5 years, especially with my older one who has big emotions. Like he's the kid, he's the deeply feeling kid, as Dr. Becky calls it. He's like the big emotions kid. My 2-year-old is not as much that way. And he is just the big emotions kid. And I have learned that when I also get dysregulated from his dysregulation, that I have to come back and be like, hey, mommy got really loud there and I shouldn't have gotten as loud as I did, or mommy was getting really frustrated and probably wasn't speaking very kindly to you. And that I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have done that. And like that acknowledgement is the best way I can model for him that we're all human and those things happen, but how do you correct it? How do you repair it, etc.? So yeah. So I think that's what I mean when I say like it's really hard. The parenting with intentionality is one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, I second that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
really hard,
it is. It is.
especially because you love them so much. And I loved my team. I've loved everything I've worked on and people I've worked with, but like the depth of love at a cellular level for your children is just something else.
That's
Something
right.
else.
Yeah, it's different.
It is.
And yeah, and like tying it to this workbook, right? Like where I think, initially, like when I was reading, I wasn't necessarily thinking about like this workbook for parents specifically, right? But like off of what you're saying, I feel like, it says spiritual tools for modern living. It's like, it's not saying, okay, you got to go up to the top of a mountain and meditate for a month by yourself and you're a parent and you got two little kids and they're going crazy and stuff. It's like, okay, so what can I do? This, I've got 60 seconds,
Yep.
right? Or I got this moment here, like in the car. And I think this workbook could be a great tool for parents as well.
Yeah, yeah. I do think it can be a great tool. And I think it can be a great tool because I mean, really the first three quarters of the book are about know thyself, right? It's really go internal and recognize what drives you, what shapes you, what values you have, what you believe about the soul and God and religion and the meaning of life and suffering and death and how to deal with that, because you can't help your children guide through those deep questions, and they will ask you all the deep questions. Our family, my mom and dad, our family dog of 17 years passed away a few weeks ago, and my children have asked multiple questions over the last few weeks about death and dying, and does that mean mommy's going to die and daddy's going to die, and but why didn't Charlie come back after he got sick? When we go to the doctor and we're sick, we come back home, right? Like there were a lot of questions about processing this, and I know what I believe. And so for me to articulate, well, what mommy believes is that our bodies die, but we have a soul and our soul continues on, right? So like for mommy to be able to articulate those things, I have to know them. And so the first three quarters of the book are about know thyself. And it is really about wrestle with these things for yourself, because you can't talk about them with others, especially with your children, unless you know what you believe. And it's okay to say that this is what I believe, and you can figure out for yourself what you believe. But I think children look to us to know what we believe, because that we are their center, we are the core, we are the sun that they come back to over and over again. And I think we need to shine the kind of light that we believe with confidence to them. So I think that's important.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. No doubt about it. And as we're coming up on time, right?
Yes.
I want to ask any final thoughts you want to leave with me, with the audience. Where can people find the Soul Boom
Yeah.
workbook? Follow your work. Yeah, just give you the floor. Any closing thoughts as we're coming up on time?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest closing thoughts is sometimes I feel like I have these conversations, and people will be like, "Oh my God, it feels like you've got it all figured out," and and I just want to say, like, I don't. Every day is a learning for me. Every day there are moments of amazing growth, and there's amazing challenges. And I've had incredible success in my career, and I've also had really challenging moments in my career, and I've also had amazing parts of my personal life and really challenging ones. I've dealt with infertility for 5 years in trying to get my kids, and so I think everyone assumes that once you figure it out, you figured it out and you're good. And that's not true. I do think that these, as much as we hate things that take a long time and require an investment of time, we have to be patient about in our immediate needs fulfilled society. I do think that this is work that happens over a long period of time, and inner work, yes, it is sacred, but it's also a lifelong journey. And I have had incredible highs and lows in that journey. And that is every day of every year. And so I just want to reiterate that if you're in the weeds right now, there is still light, there is still a crest to the wave to come, but that we all have those lows and we all have those moments. And I think that's important to remember and remind everyone of. And in terms of the book, the Soul Boom Workbook, Spiritual Tools for Modern Living. You can find it anywhere you buy your books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Better yet, go to your indie bookstore and get it. And you can find out more about Soul Boom by going to soulboom.com. And you can find out more about me and my own individual work as a producer and a speaker at shabnamspeaks.com.
Yeah. And I want to thank you first off for coming on, right? And taking your time and energy with me and to share it with my audience. I'm honored. And secondly, to you and Rain and the team for producing this work, because it is, I mean, like I said before at the beginning, I feel like I can continue to go back to this workbook again and again over the rest of my life, the rest of my existence, and there will be things that I go, yeah, I need to reflect on this. I need to do this activity. Like, just the value you have given such a gift here.
Thank
So I'm
you.
encouraging the world to go get this workbook and see how they can activate it in their lives, because I think it's a treasure trove. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
That means a lot. I really appreciate that, and I very much so appreciate the endorsement. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Well, we made it. 5:30.
We made it. Perfect. I will go watch a movie with my son now and he'll be very happy. I heard him actually 2 minutes ago come knocking and my husband being like, it's not 5:30.
You gotta wait. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, Chad. You delivered. We went places I have not gone on other podcasts. So good job.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Take it as a compliment. Yes.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and if you liked it, please share with a friend on social media. That goes a long way to promoting this podcast so I can continue to interview and share these conversations with fascinating people. You can follow me on social media, Chad Stoloff, and visit my website, chadstoloff.wordpress.com, for more information. I'd love it if you would leave a review to support the podcast. Thanks so much. Until next time.